Before you retreat into the comfortable lie that love is pure and women are innocent, ask yourself this: why do history's most brilliant minds, from Nietzsche to Van Gogh, from Socrates to Hemingway, crumble at the feet of feminine influence? Schopenhauer saw it clearly. He understood that the greatest threat to a man's destiny isn't failure, poverty, or even death. It's the illusion of love, the seductive whisper that tells him a woman's approval is the ultimate prize. You've been taught that women are nurturers, that they elevate men, that they're the moral compass of society. But Schopenhauer, with his ruthless honesty, revealed the darker truth. Women are the mirror of a man's weakness. They don't destroy men out of malice. They destroy men because men allow it. They destroy men because untamed desire, like a wild horse, drags the genius away from his mission and into the quicksand of emotional slavery. Schopenhauer called it the will to live, the blind, irrational force that drives men to chase pleasure over purpose. And nowhere is this more evident than in the way a man abandons his greatness for the fleeting warmth of a woman's smile. Think of the artist who trades his masterpiece for a lover's approval, the leader who softens his vision to avoid her disapproval, the visionary who dulls his edge because she finds his intensity too much. Schopenhauer warned us, the female instinct isn't to build a man's legacy, it's to secure her own survival. And if that means clipping his wings, if that means diverting his fire into the mundane, so be it. This isn't evil. This isn't cruelty. It's biology. It's the unspoken game that has played out since the dawn of time, where a man's thirst for validation collides with a woman's need for control. But here's where Schopenhauer's confession cuts deepest. The woman isn't the problem. You are. Your inability to see her for what she truly is, a force of nature, neither good nor evil, but utterly indifferent to your higher calling, is your undoing. Schopenhauer wrote, "Man is at bottom a wild and terrible animal. Yet most men domesticate themselves, trading their ferocity for the false security of a woman's arms. They call this sacrifice love." Schopenhauer called it self-betrayal. When was the last time you questioned the stories you've been fed about romance? When was the last time you considered that your obsession with her approval might be the very chain holding you back from greatness? Schopenhauer's words are a wake-up call, a slap to the face of every man who still believes that a woman's love is the pinnacle of his existence. The truth? A woman's love is irrelevant unless you've first mastered the chaos within yourself. Schopenhauer didn't just expose the game, he laid bare the mechanics of it. In his darkest writings, he revealed that what men call love is nothing more than the instinctual pull of nature, a biological trick designed to propagate the species. The poet who writes sonnets, the warrior who fights for glory, the genius who burns the midnight oil, all can be reduced to a single, humiliating truth. They are slaves to the illusion that a woman's affection is worth more than their own sovereignty. And here's the brutal irony. The greater the man, the harder he falls. Why? Because the fire that drives him to create, to conquer, to transcend, is the same fire that makes him vulnerable to the siren song of feminine validation. Schopenhauer saw this in the ruins of history's giants. Beethoven, a titan of music, was broken by his obsession with the immortal beloved, a woman who never truly saw him. Tolstoy, the literary colossus, spent his final years in a miserable marriage, fleeing his own home to die alone in a train station. Even Schopenhauer himself, the man who pierced through human illusion, was tormented by his mother's rejection, a wound that shaped his entire philosophy. These men weren't weak, they were great. And that's precisely why they were destroyed. Because greatness demands obsession, and obsession, untamed, becomes a man's Achilles' heel. A woman doesn't need to lift a finger to break such a man. She only needs to exist as the object of his hunger, and he will gut himself on the altar of his own longing. But Schopenhauer's warning goes deeper. He didn't just blame women. He blamed the idea of women, the cultural myth that paints them as angels, as muses, as the missing piece to a man's happiness. This myth, he argued, is the poison that turns men into beggars. Watch how the modern man grovels for a crumb of attention, how he reshapes his life to fit her whims, how he calls this degradation devotion. Schopenhauer would laugh at such weakness. In The World as Will and Representation, he wrote that the will, the blind, irrational force driving all human desire, is the root of suffering. And what is a man's infatuation with a woman if not the purest expression of this suffering? He craves her, not because she is worthy, but because his will demands it. And in that craving, he loses himself. Here's the twist most men miss. Women know this, not intellectually, not as some grand conspiracy, but instinctively. They feel the power they hold over a man who hasn't mastered his own will. They test him, not because they're cruel, but because they're probing for weakness, just as nature probes for the weakest link in the herd. When a woman withdraws affection, when she plays hot and cold, when she demands more while giving less, she isn't being manipulative, she's being natural. And the man who collapses under these tests, who chases, pleads, and sacrifices his dignity, isn't proving his love. He's proving his inadequacy. Schopenhauer called this the tragedy of the will. The tragedy isn't that women behave this way. The tragedy is that men let them. The modern world screams a lie so seductive that even the strongest men kneel before it. You need her. You need her love to be complete, her touch to feel alive, her approval to matter. Schopenhauer tore this lie apart with a philosopher's scalpel. He didn't argue. He observed, like a scientist watching a virus consume its host. And what he saw was this: the men who rise to greatness are not the ones who surrender to love's delirium, but the ones who see it for what it is, a beautiful, dangerous distraction. Consider the myth of Orpheus, the legendary musician who descended into hell to retrieve his beloved Eurydice. The gods gave him one condition: don't look back. But he did. And in that moment of weakness, he lost her forever. Schopenhauer would have nodded grimly. The story isn't about love's triumph. It's about a man's fatal inability to master his own impulses. Orpheus wasn't punished for loving too much. He was punished for needing too much. And that need, that desperate, clawing hunger for a woman's presence, is what Schopenhauer identified as the killer of kings, the silencer of genius, the chain that keeps ordinary men from becoming legends. Now look around. Watch the modern Orpheus in his natural habitat, the man who checks his phone every 3 minutes for her text, the alpha who crumbles when she flirts with another, the husband who abandons his life's work to keep his marriage intact. These men aren't villains. They're victims, not of women, but of their own refusal to see the game. Schopenhauer called it the denial of the will. Not repression, not hatred of women, but the conscious, disciplined choice to place something above the hunger for feminine validation. For most men, that something doesn't exist. And so they dangle like puppets, jerked around by every smile, every cold shoulder, every passing whim of a woman who, deep down, wishes they had the strength to resist her. Here's what no one dares to say. Women don't respect what they can control. They may love it. They may depend on it. But respect? Never. Schopenhauer saw this in the animal kingdom, in history, in the ruins of his own heart. A lioness doesn't mate with the hyena who brings her scraps. She seeks the lion who ignores her. This isn't cruelty. It's nature's brutal logic. And the man who understands this, truly understands it, stops begging for love and starts commanding it. Not through manipulation, not through games, but by becoming something so undeniable, so fiercely himself, that her approval becomes irrelevant. Schopenhauer's confession was this: great men aren't destroyed by women. They're destroyed by their own refusal to outgrow the need for one. There's a reason Schopenhauer's words feel like a punch to the gut. He rejected the fairy tale and forced men to stare into the mirror of their own desperation. Most philosophers sugarcoat. They speak of love's nobility, its transcendence, its divine spark. Schopenhauer spat on those platitudes. He pointed to the drunkard sobbing over a lost lover and asked, "Is this divinity?" He watched the scholar abandon his life's work to chase a woman half his age and sneered, "Is this wisdom?" The pattern was undeniable. The more brilliant the man, the more spectacularly he imploded when love's illusion gripped him. This isn't theory, it's autopsy. Van Gogh sliced off his ear for a prostitute who laughed at him. Poe drank himself to death over a child bride who died young. Fitzgerald wasted his talent trying to please a wife who saw him as a paycheck. Schopenhauer's genius was in recognizing these weren't tragedies, they were choices. Every one of these men had the same fatal flaw. They believed a woman's love was the oxygen their genius needed to breathe. And in that belief, they suffocated themselves. The modern world will call this perspective bitter, cynical. Not all women, it will whimper. But Schopenhauer wasn't interested in exceptions. He studied the rule. And the rule is this: a man who places a woman at the center of his universe doesn't gain a muse. He loses a soul. Look at the romantic man today. He postpones his dreams to save for a wedding ring. He silences his opinions to keep the peace. He trades his ambition for domestic comfort. Then he wonders why he wakes at 3 a.m. with a hollow chest, staring at a ceiling that seems to press lower every year. Schopenhauer would have told him the truth. You didn't lose her. You lost yourself. But here's the twist, the secret, hidden in Schopenhauer's bleakest writings. This isn't a death sentence, it's a liberation. The moment a man realizes he doesn't need love to be great is the moment he becomes dangerous. Not to women, to mediocrity. History's true titans, the Caesars, the Beethovens, the Newtons, shared one trait. They worshipped something higher than a woman's touch. For some it was power, for others, art. For Schopenhauer, it was truth itself. And that devotion made them untouchable. Most men live their entire lives, never understanding why they feel empty. They chase money, sex, status, thinking these will fill the void. Schopenhauer knew better. The void isn't from lack of women, it's from lack of meaning. And nothing drains meaning faster than the delusion that a woman's love is the ultimate prize. This is the grand deception. Cultures rise and fall on it. Religions preach it. Songs scream it. You're nothing without her. Schopenhauer called it the greatest lie ever sold. Because the moment a man believes it, he signs his own death warrant. Not physically, but spiritually. His spine softens. His vision blurs. His fire dims to embers, just warm enough to keep her comfortable, but never hot enough to light the world. The proof is everywhere. The entrepreneur who stops taking risks because stability pleases his wife. The artist who dulls his edge to fit her aesthetic. The leader who hesitates because she might disapprove. These aren't small compromises. They're spiritual suicides. And Schopenhauer mapped the pathology with chilling precision. First, the man mistakes dependency for love. Then, he mistakes sacrifice for virtue. Finally, he wakes up one day as a stranger in his own life, wondering when he died. But there's another path. Schopenhauer saw it in the Stoics, in the monks, in the rare men who walked through fire and came out hardened, not hollow. These men didn't reject love. They redefined it. Love wasn't something they needed. It was something they chose. And that distinction made all the difference. So here's the question that will determine your destiny. Do you want to be Orpheus, begging the gods for another glance at what you've lost? Or do you want to be Odysseus, the man who heard the siren's song, tied himself to the mast, and sailed on? Schopenhauer's confession wasn't about women. It was about you. The prison isn't her. It's your refusal to see the bars. Break them.